IMSA's history with the Glen dates back more than 30 years ago. Names like Derek Bell, Jeff Brabham, and Scott Pruitt have claimed the checkered flag here. There will no doubt be a sense of prestige for the drivers to add theirs to the list. Let's see who can wrap up the season with a victory as we get ready to watch round 3 of the IMSA iRacing Challenge, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Nick Schmeg. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. With the incredible diversity of series that Watkins Glen has hosted over time, there's a lot to take in. But to help out with those who are new to this New York circuit, we have our handy track guide ready to help out. Welcome to Watkins Glen International. Situated in upstate New York, just south of the Finger Lakes, this track has seen it all. Few road circuits can boast hosting Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR, and IMSA during its history. Though it did have a brief fallow period in the early 80s, thanks to the investment of local companies, it's grown into one of the premier road tracks in the U.S. With 4 layouts to choose from that range between 2.5 and 3.5 miles in length, lap times can vary greatly. But it also means it's suitable for lots of different levels of racing, from amateur to pro. The one thing that stays consistent no matter which car and which layout you're using is that Watkins Glen means speed. Many of the straights are very long, and the majority of the corners are fast sweepers. Some of them include a surprising amount of banking as well. Combine that with the proximity of the barriers, and this historic circuit retains a very old-school feel. Drivers in lesser-powered cars can expect drafting battles, while higher-powered machinery will test the skill and bravery of their pilots. Some of the turns are visually iconic, such as the carousel and the S's. Others, like the inner loop, the chute, and turn 9, greatly challenge even the expertly skilled. And of course, we haven't even mentioned the drastic amount of elevation change drivers experience. Between its rich history and popularity among drivers, this track stays busy and seems likely to be that way for a long, long time. I listed some of the names in sports cars and at least IMSA that have raced here, but Nick, you talk about names like Jackie Stewart, Formula One stars, IndyCar stars, NASCAR stars. Everybody who has raced as a significant name, I'd say, has at least stepped foot here once.
Yeah, exactly, Joe. And that's why Watkins Glen International is one of those tracks that simply needs no introduction. But for those watching at home today who have not been able to watch a 6 hours of the Glen or a Tioga Downs 240, as many of these Michelin Pilot Challenge racers have competed in, let me try to break down New York's Thunder Road for you a little better. We're looking at 3.5 miles spanning 12 turns, but this track used to have a much different look. Starting in the 1940s, the village of Watkins Glen, set aside on the beautiful Seneca Lake in New York's Finger Lake region, hosted several high-end world-class races. It was on a circuit that spanned over 6 miles of backcountry roads. It included a dirt road section, a gravel road section, and a daunting jump over some active railroad tracks. And as crazy and as dangerous as that sounds, the permanent road course that was eventually built up on the hill that we see today still holds many of the same characteristics. The blistering speeds around here make mistakes very costly. So watch for that as they storm up through the S's around the bus stop and set themselves up for the boot through the carousel. Turn 1 here is another danger zone. The 90, as it's called, is a great passing opportunity, but several Formula One, NASCAR, and IndyCar drivers, like you mentioned, Joe, have seen that corner be the end of their racing day here at the Glen. If this track could talk, boy, would it have some stories to tell. And Joe, today will be yet another chapter in that great history book.
I'm so looking forward to this. As I mentioned, it's a driver and fan favorite, and it's no wonder. In fact, why don't we take a look at this race itself with our race details and go over that? It's only a 3-round season that we're doing here in the IMSA iRacing Challenge, and they've got 2 cars this time. Remember, the last time it was just the Porsche Clubsport GT4. Now they've got the BMW M4, which has just been added to iRacing this last week. So 2 to choose from. Many of the drivers here have elected to go with it, some of which actually drive that car in the Pilot Challenge. Now, they have a 10-minute qualifying. They're going to be out there by themselves, so no drafting able to be done here in the qualifying, which could offer quite an advantage in the race itself. And it is a 60-minute race that they'll be competing, and they have open setups to try and get the best out of these machines here in the virtual world. Now, you may have seen on our graphic, we haven't mentioned him yet, but we've got Peter Mackay with us as well as our pit reporter down there. Peter, we've got two different types of cars out there. Now, we were talking about a little bit before this, that on iRacing, they're not identical. So there's slightly different handling. So I'm kind of wondering if we'll see a little bit of an advantage for one or the other today.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here for this IMSA iRacing Challenge series, and it's a pleasure to see, as you say, two different cars on track. In the real world, the Michelin Pilot Challenge, one of its real USPs is the variety of cars on show. Of course, the GT4 classification, you have many different types of cars. You have McLarens, Porsche, BMW, Audi, and many, many more. But here on iRacing, we have the two. We have the Porsche and now the BMW M4. But as you rightly say, they couldn't be more different in philosophy. They're made in the same country, of course, but very different. The BMW, the engine is mounted in the front and is a 3-litre twin-turbo straight six. Very traditional for BMW to have a straight six engine. For the Porsche, it's a flat six, a boxer engine that's mounted in the middle, a little bit higher in capacity, 3.8 litres, but no turbocharger. So they sound different and they deliver their power differently. So it's going to be fascinating to see which car, if any, has the advantage over the course of this lap here at the wonderful Watkins Glen circuit.
Yeah, we're just letting the warm-up finish out. For those curious, BMW is leading the timing sheets here on the warm-up. That's Niels Cook as we watch the Dutch driver Visser out there now. She coming across the line to set another lap. And we do have, it looks like it is relatively evenly spread up at the top, because I see Chinichi up there in second, and the number 27, he's driving a Porsche. He's actually just coming down to finish a lap as well here. Mostly drivers probably just nailing down those setups here during the warm-up, which has relatively hot conditions, Nick. I'm looking at the temperatures. It's 104 degrees Fahrenheit on the track surface. Now, we've often talked about the tires on these cars and needing to get them warmed up. I wonder if that'll solve some of the problems with that.
Yeah, at the start, I think it might solve some of the problems, but later on in the run, we might see a few issues. The high speeds here, like I talked about, you really are sliding through a lot of these turns to begin with, let alone with such hot conditions. The one good thing I see is that it is about 4 o'clock p.m. Virtual standard time, so maybe with a little bit of cloud cover, and as the day goes on, that it might cool down just a little bit. I already see it down 1 degree, so maybe it'll continue to drop throughout the day.
Absolutely. And another driver that I want to give a quick shout out to that we've seen a couple times in recent days here on the channel is Jimmy Broadbent. Now, most of the drivers here are IMSA drivers in the real world. Jimmy Broadbent, and this is not to take away from him, he's actually known for being a sim racer here online. Very well-known YouTube personality. And he has actually done some hosting on some other sim racing series as well around the globe. So clearly knows his stuff, and he did win the 2019 iRacing 24 Hours of Le Mans. So not a slow driver by any stretch of the imagination. He's going to be out there today and is currently sitting in his pit stall, just kind of letting this warm-up finish out. Looks like we do have a little bit of help for our viewers who are wanting to follow their favorite driver. If you want to check it out, that is at GSRC.TV, where we've got live timing. You can see every single driver at all times during this race. Keep track of things. We've got a bigger field than we've seen in each of the previous races here, Peter, 25 cars. Now, the good news is we've got a much longer lap than than you would have at some tracks that these cars race at, such as Lime Rock Park. In fact, it's worth noting, I feel like all three of the tracks that the series is raced at have all been relatively long lap times. So I'm guessing we won't really see too many problems in terms of traffic here today.
No, I doubt it, Joe, especially with the depth of field that we have. So we have some incredibly high quality drivers here in the field today. So we're going to be treated to a really good battle. And also, of course, here at Watkins Glen, there are so many great opportunities to stay in the draft. So my prediction is that we're going to see quite a big pack at the front. Although Niels Cook in the 98, he has had 7 laps underneath the 1:57 barrier so far in this practice session. Very, very impressive indeed. So hopefully the rest of the field will be able to hang on to the back of him. But Watkins Glen is it's a wonderful layout, plenty of time down the straights and some real fast corners as well. And I was having a few laps earlier in the Porsche GT4 and keeping the momentum up with these cars. They don't have enormous horsepower, so it's good to keep the momentum up and not scrub off too much speed.
Yeah, we saw Cook going side by side with one of our previous front runners in this series, Nielsen there, having a little bit of fun during the practice. But Cook definitely has quite a pedigree underneath him. We should point out that Niels has raced, of course, for both Core Motorsports and Williams Esports. Those are 2 hefty teams. We were talking about that, Nick, that even though he formerly raced for them, he's now racing for BS Competition, and I'd say he's holding his own here today.
Yeah, he certainly is, and we've seen him compete in the Porsche Esports Super Cup before. He's a world championship driver on iRacing. He's done that before, and he's just done so much sim racing. It's so interesting to see a lot of these drivers that are more real world centered. Like we see some other drivers out there from the Michelin Pilot Challenge, or some of these more sim racing focused drivers like Niels Cook, and you already mentioned Jimmy Broadbent, who's down just about halfway through the field right now. It'll be very interesting to see which end prevails. We're getting a good mix of both tastes today.
That gap between first and second right now, Chinichi still holds that, is nearly 0.3 of a second. It is a long lap, but that's pretty impressive. Let's mention third in the timing sheets, Teddy Framheim. He just finished another lap. He's still out there warming up here in these final few minutes. Is looking relatively close. He's still about 0.2 off of Andrew there in that number 27 machine. So he might be one to watch out for, but he's in a very close fight in terms of times here in the warm-up with Robbie Foley as well. Foley out there with a number of laps under his belt, but is faring well in his BMW, one of those that is racing in the new car that they've released. But he won the pole on the first round. So let's see if he can come back and do that yet again once they get around to the qualifying. He's only got 2 laps to do it, so he's got to be clean and he's got to be quick.
Another thing about Foley is that he does not actually race in the Pilot Challenge. He's actually over in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. He races for Turner Motorsports in the BMW in the GTD class. So it's interesting to see him compete down in this a little bit of a lower rank, but competition certainly anything but that.
Yeah, so familiar with the Bimmer, but that's in the M6 that he races up there. This is the M4 here, the GT4 version of that car that he is running as you see him come up to the top of the hill. We heard Peter talk about these cars not having a whole lot of oomph under them, but he just hit 150 by the time he hit the brakes here for the inner loop. And you consider the slipstream that they're going to be getting, they'll probably be hitting maybe 155 in a few cases if they get a good slingshot.
Yeah, we're hoping so, and I think the draft train is going to be really important with these cars. It's interesting you mentioned the Turner BMW guys. We've got 2 Turner BMW entries in this race. We've got the 95 of Connor Bloom, who's had some success with us in this series so far, and as you say, Robbie Foley, the 96, and of course Robbie and his co-driver Bill Oberlin, a real BMW legend. They won Petit Le Mans last year in their BMW M6 in a fantastic liquid moly white and red paint scheme. But he's back in the more traditional yellow and blue Turner colours today, which actually takes inspiration from the Renault Laguna touring cars in the British Touring Car Championship in the mid-90s.
Interesting. Always full of facts. Peter is always enlightening me on things I didn't know about. But yeah, a lot of Michelin Pilot Challenge drivers here running in this series. But you heard Nick talk about the WeatherTech drivers. If you want to see more of them, don't forget that IMSA has another race here at Watkins Glen in the GTE cars coming up a little bit later today. So definitely tune in for that if you want to see more action after this one. A big thanks to both Michelin and WeatherTech for coming forward in these difficult times and helping bring racing back to the screen. So we watch now Visser come up the hill and through the S's. Looking on board with her. She's getting a little bit of a toe. I'm curious to see if this is close enough. This is a bit far back from the driver ahead of her. That is Mansilla that she is with. And it does look like she's reeling him in. So even at, that was almost a second back at the start. It looks like there's going to be a hefty hole in the air that is punched by the car ahead.
Yeah, she got up to 153, and you mentioned 150 is about their baseline top speed there, so definitely got a little whiff of something heading into the inner loop.
Down in through the chute. And this is one of those areas that I'm going to be watching out for as we now head to the qualifying. Nick is in that boot section. Things get so narrow through there, and I'll be honest, I always had the worst trouble in pretty much every corner on that part of the track.
Yeah, I agree. That's probably my worst part of this track as well from a racing standpoint. But I'm always amazed when I watch, especially in sim racing, just how many passes get done down there into the chute, into the first turn, into the boot. That sharp left-hander. That's probably where we'll see a majority of the passes, just because they get so much slipstream and momentum coming out of the bus stop and down into there. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that exact same thing happen today.
All right, drivers now out on track here in the qualifying. We have had a slight lowering of the temperature since we hopped over to the session. It's now 100 degrees Fahrenheit on the track surface itself. Now you see the air temperature 76 degrees. That won't affect things as much. You'll want to be watching that track temperature and paying attention to that, because that is where the rubber literally meets the road. And that will affect how fast and how the cars drive. You can see one of our Porsches heading through the carousel there as now one of our Bimmers climb up the hill up towards the back stretch. Looking to see who's going to be our first driver to cross the line. I think it's going to be Mansilla, actually, number 44, who is currently out there in his Cayman.
I was taking a look at Mansilla earlier in practice. I'm always curious to see, with all of these drivers, some of them very new to iRacing, some of them very veteran. We just don't know it because they spend a lot of their time on the real world. I always like to see what their iRating is here on the sim, and Mansilla actually has the second highest of this entire group today, just behind Niels Cook. And in third place in that iRating run is actually Jimmy Broadbent, down in about the 4,000 range.
Yeah, he actually races for Team Redline. There's another big team name in esports and sim racing, if you're not familiar with them. So Mansilla got a lot of backing there too. As he comes down to start his first time lap. 10 minutes, but with just about 2 minutes for a lap, drivers will need plenty of that time to try and get these times in. And for our viewers that aren't familiar with iRacing, Nick, I talked about needing to be clean. Can you talk a little bit about incidents and how those tie into qualifying?
Yeah, so here in iRacing, we have incident points. It is iRacing's way of keeping track of your safety rating, just how safe you stay out on track. And those come in a couple of different forms. You can get, say, a 1X, which is just, it's probably the most common one, especially you'll see here in qualifying. That's when you just go off track. You break those track limits, and you get a little bit too greedy with those high speeds here at Watkins Glen. That will, any kind of incident point you get in qualifying will actually disqualify your time on that lap, and you only get 2 laps here. In the race, we're also going to see 2Xs. That's just slight contact, a lot of times with a static object like the wall, and 4X, which is contact, whether it's your fault or not, with another driver on track.
We won't see too much of that. They do have a spare car out here, which essentially means if they damage the car too much, even though they can come in for repairs, they can duck into pit lane, take a completely new car, and get back out without any damage on it whatsoever. And that is to help everybody be able to have a little bit more fun here, since this is not for anything too serious, even though I'm sure the drivers are taking it quite seriously considering the speeds that we're seeing, the lap times that we're seeing. Speaking of which, this is Mansilla coming around to finish this first lap through the penultimate turn. Very quick left-hander, and then almost street course-like here in the final turn. See how close he dares get to the edge on the first time around. giving a little bit of space. Maybe he'll take it closer to those tires on the second one, and his time is going to be a 56.7. Not too shabby. Let's see how everybody else follows that.
So far, it's going to keep him up at the top. 2 other times come through, and now we've got some more. Now 6 times on the board. Yeah, I think Mansilla out of Argentina is going to keep that top spot for now. Oh, just as I say that, Niels Cook goes to the top spot by about 0.6 of a second, a 156.1.
Wow, more than half a second difference. Cantu is less than a tenth off of Mansilla, so it's close behind them, but Cook is just smashing the field right now on the first time around. We got half the drivers with a time in. See, Toby Grahovic is coming through the 26, 59.0. It's going to put him 14th. Unfortunately, last of the drivers who put a time down so far. Brandon Kidd crosses the line with a 57.3. That's going to be good enough for 6 outside of the third row. That is very nice for the 97 car. See Devin Jones on screen. Looks like he's just starting his first time lap because I don't see one on the board for him. And I know Peter's keeping an eye on the times that we haven't quite caught yet. Peter, have you noticed anything significant down there?
Yeah, I think the biggest mention's got to go to someone representing the sim racing world, the number 87 BMW of Jimmy Broadbent. He did a 1 minute 57.6 in practice, but he's actually gone 0.6 quicker on his very first lap in qualifying, while the other drivers are still a little bit behind their practice pace. So good stuff from Jimmy, and he currently sixth place on the grid.
Wonder if he's got a little bit of a different qualifying setup that's gotten him a little speed there. Mansilla is back around for his second time. It's quicker by 0.2, and that's only going to put him up into second. He can't catch Cook with that. Zug is also following him, but Zug's got a little ways to go because he's only in the carousel. Looks like Cook's actually going to abandon his second lap, so he doesn't like his time around. He's going to pull into pit lane. We've got Bergstein out there, and I can see Framheim as well, the 106 up to third. A lot of changes here happening here on this second lap around.
Yeah, you mentioned Zug. He was up to second, and then Mansilla knocked him off, and like you said, Teddy Framheim just bumped him down, relegated him down to 4th place. So that's going to be starting on the outside of row number 2. He's going to have a little bit of work to do here at the start.
Watching Brandon Kidd now as he comes around down and across the line. No improvement, though. So 9th is the best he's going to see. What about Foley? Pole sitter for the first round. Not for the second round. 56.6, but good enough for the second row. A big jump up the field with his second time. So we watch Zug. Looks like he is going to finish up this second lap to see if he can get... Oh, no, he's not. He made a mistake off the corner. So that one is not going to be quicker. The Diatch driver finds himself sputtering to the line with a little bit of an error. Janichi, who has yet to set a time, he had an off track on his first one, is really under the gun. He seemed quick in the warm-up. What can the 27 do? A 56.7. That is certainly going to put him up there outside of the third row for him.
Yeah, Janichi was second quickest in that warm-up practice session. He's going to be starting, like you said, probably down in 6th. So not sure he wanted a little bit better than that, as we're watching Devin Jones now try to turn another lap.
Jones, Foes is yet to set a time. Johnson needs one more lap through, and I see those are the only 3 that need to finish out here in the final minute and a half that we have on the clock. Watching the number 82 come up to the heel of the boot. We sometimes see passes into here, and then things get really tricky. The return to the main circuit here on turn 9, that off-camber corner, Nick, that catches so many out.
Yeah, that's really tough because the banking is not working in your favor. You really have to overcome it, and we've seen so many drivers just loop it around there.
Devin Jones, first lap time was good enough for 23rd. That's pretty far down the field with a 59.3. Let's see what this one will do. as he comes out of the final corner, gives quite a bit of leeway to that barrier to the outside. As he crosses, it's a 59 flat, 3/10 faster, but that's not going to change his position. Johnson doesn't count his second lap, unfortunately. Had an off track somewhere. And Foes, I lost him. He sets a time, but that's only good enough for 25th. All right, that means our qualifying is over. Let's go through our starting order for the day. Niels Cook puts it on the pole, and he's still got 4/10 over Mansilla. It does not bode well for the 44, who, if he hopes to try and catch him, will start second with Teddy Framheim in the third position. Robbie Foley will be starting P4 today. Then you've got Marius Zug in the fifth position. Andrew Chinichi, not as good in the qualifying as his warm-up, but sixth place is still a decent showing. Andy Cantu will be starting P7 with Jimmy Broadbent showing well with an eighth place. Vaitsky Visser, she'll be starting in P9 with Nick Yaloli in 10th. Nick?
Brandon Kidd coming out of ARCA in some oval racing. Maybe that'll play into his help here at Watkins Glen. He's going to start in 11th, right in front of Nielsen Lawrence, Lance Bergstein, Connor Bloom, and John Tecchi. Lots of big names back there. Eric Oviat's going to be starting 16th with Alan Stad in 17th. Michael R. Johnson and Matthew Hollander line up right behind in front of Michael W. Johnson starting in 20th.
The Johnson's back with us again. Jacob Abrams starts 21st with Toby Grahovich in 22nd and Devin Jones in 23rd. Mikel Miller will be starting P24. All drivers managed to get a time in. Sean Foes going to be taking up the back of the field as we're going to get going here soon enough, as many of our Michelin Pilot Challenge drivers try to prep themselves as they would in a real race, getting mentally ready for the IMSA iRacing Challenge. Weather has gone down once again. Good news, I guess, for you, Peter, because I guess it's a little bit hotter. Hopefully you didn't wear your sandals, because 96 would be a little bit hot on those toesies.
Yes, good kilt wearing weather this here in New York, and of course Watkins Glen was a very happy hunting ground. Of course, it was a fall tradition for many years for Formula One to come to Watkins Glen, and the Scottish did not too bad. Both Jim Clark and Sir Jackie Stewart clinching wins here at Watkins Glen.
Indeed. So we wait for the pace car to lead them around on the pace lap. Have a full pace lap to go through here. And Nick, I know, because we were talking off camera a little bit earlier, because this is essentially a home track for you. You tend to have all kinds of nifty facts around you. You talked about some of the history. Is there, as we wait for them to head around, do you have any ones that you haven't mentioned to us on air yet that you could enlighten us with?
I'm not sure. I think some of my favorite moments here, spending a lot of time here at Watkins Glen International, is actually down in the amateur races that don't get seen on TV, the SCCA, and some of the Trans Am races, which a lot of these drivers still compete in. I know a lot of Porsche's Owners Club drivers competing in this race, and a lot of drivers from the SCCA majors. I always try to make it up there to that one, and it is always a lot of fun to sit down in turn one and see about 60 Spec Racer Fords or Miatas or whatever it may be that day come storming over that hill. A lot of drivers with that amateur experience. Fun atmosphere those days, and great environment to go for a very, very low cost, and it's so much fun. I think a lot of these drivers, while they have a lot of experience in the professional series, I think those are the series that might pay dividends for them today.
Absolutely. And I do have a bit of a story of my own here from Watkins Glen, because I've had the luck to have gotten to watch a NASCAR race here many years ago. I believe it was '98. And I am actually sitting next to a tire right now that came from that race that I bought where they were selling used tires. And it was John Andretti's, of all people, rest his soul. So the number 43 on here, not the 43 most NASCAR people tend to think of, but is my tie to this track that has long been a favorite of mine as well. You can see them now coming out of the inner loop and into the carousel, plunging downhill and heading into that extra bit of track that Formula One raced. Now, was there talk, because I know you follow a little bit closely, Nick, there was talk about NASCAR maybe adding the boot, wasn't there?
There's been talk, there's been debate. It seems like every August we go through this discussion, and I don't think it's making much headway. But you never know. I mean, they expanded the Sonoma track back to the carousel there, the full circuit. That's what they used to run. It would be interesting to see NASCAR race on the boot. At least I say we put the Xfinity Series on the boot, see what happens. A lot of great campers down there.
I like that idea. I think that's a good little test for it. As we watch the drivers now come back uphill, very steep uphill. That's going to be an important one, I feel like, Peter, because going back to your point of the car's not having a whole lot of oomph, the elevation change isn't talked about as much here, and there's a few places where I have to imagine momentum is going to be important.
It really is. That corner they've just come out of, called the toe part of the boot, and they're now coming through the heel. But the exit of the toe is one of the most important corners here on Watkins Glen, because as you rightly say, it is a really big climb up the hill. It's also very important, turn 1, called the 90. That the exit of that corner, particularly in these GT4 cars, is critical, because it's one big long drag up the hill to the bus stop and inner loop.
All right, so as they come out of the final couple corners, they're going to give control to Niels Cook. Let's see how he can handle the pressure of being up at the front of everybody with a lot of real-world drivers breathing down his neck. Porsche pace car is in. Cook gets the green flag, and it's a decent start, but behind them there's a huge checkup, 4 wide in some cases. It's going to be a bit hairy coming down into the 90. Are we going to be able to make it through? Someone is in deep, a little bit of a touch. Someone's sliding and a few going around. Unfortunately, it looks like one of those is Marius Zug.
Yeah, Zug's the first one to get sideways, but a lot of drivers 3 and 4 wide surprisingly make it through unscathed. Very impressive stuff as they start heading back up the S's.
Very glad that did not go worse. Cook is got a bit of a distance, about half a second back to Mansilla. Bit of a battle for third with Foley being chased by Framheim. Looks like he's going to have a better run through the inner loop as they spread apart. Look at the clump behind them, though. That looks to be led by Connor Bloom in P6. And he's being followed by Cantu, Chinichi, Broadbent, Iloli, Lawrence, all in there.
Yeah, that is Connor Bloom in 6th place. I'll remind you, he started an 11th as they get a little bit sideways behind him. That's Chinichi getting sideways right in front of Jimmy Broadbent. He's going to be able to squeak through there, and he's going to have a couple of drivers behind him, Yaloli behind him as well. He's going to take through. Nielsen Lawrence now trying to get through the action as well.
That's potentially 3 positions lost just from that one little mistake right there. Lawrence, though, doesn't have the speed as we watch the leaders now come through the heel of the boot. This is Lawrence on screen. And Chinichi's going to be to the outside and the heel, but it's going to switch back into turn 9. He's fully ahead. Does he cover him off? No, he's going to leave the door open. Maybe a little bit too late, sliding way outside. Nielsen Lawrence goes around. So an early mistake is going to cause him to have to regroup and pass a lot of cars if he wants a good finish. But our leaders coming to the line is led by Cook. Mansilla dropping back to a whole second. And Foley is on the go here because it looks like the 96 is starting to apply a little bit of pressure to that Porsche.
He definitely is. He got a good run there through the 90, through turn number 1. And this is where the slipstream you mentioned, Joe, is going to come into play the most as they make their way up the S's. It's very loose getting through there, especially in these opening laps. These tires continue to get up the temperature. Is he going to be brave enough to make a lunge down into the bus stop? He's taking a peek, but Mansilla's going to cover him off.
Oh, already aggressive defense. He weaved all the way across the track, back to the racing line. Looks like he's going to be safe. And oh, an over-under though. Coming into the carousel, Robbie Foley with a clever move and a bit of momentum. It's not over yet. This battle for P2 continues on as they almost bang doors on the way down into the chute. Foley around the outside, and that bright yellow Turner Motorsports BMW isn't going to quite have the grip, and once again covered off as Mansilla is not going to give him any quarter.
Yeah, Foley had the nose ahead after that over-under, but the track switched back directions. That allowed Mansilla to get the preferred line there through the boot. He's still going to have it as they head down into the heel, but look at that straight line speed out of Foley.
Wow, deep lunge once again into the corner, trying not to run into the side of Foley as Mansilla keeps trying to hold him back. This time, though, I think he's going to have to give up the ghost. Foley now into P2. All this fighting has allowed Teddy Framheim in the 106 to get right up with them, and now he is on the attack.
He is indeed. That's going to be 2 Porsches. He's going to back up his entry here to the corner just a little bit. That might pay off for him in turn number 12. He's going to try to take another stab at him. But, oh, man, Scylla, he is totally focused right now on Robbie Foley right in front of him. He wants to get that podium position back.
These guys' biggest fan right now is Niels Cook, as he's pulled away by about 2.5 seconds. He's taken advantage of everybody squabbling with each other. You can see he set another fastest lap here the next time around. But here we go again, Nick. It's up the hill, and that slipstream is going to start pulling them together.
Yeah, they're separated just a little bit more than they are last time, but I was really surprised Foley was able to get such a big run. So I think Mansilla is going to be in that slipstream. That BMW, the 96 of Foley, he's certainly punching a big hole in the air.
You were right that it didn't pull him in close enough with that bigger distance. So second, third, and fourth all together as they continue to lose touch with our leader. They've got Beitsky Visser back behind them in the number 100, kind of giving watch. You can just see in the background she could find herself making it a 4-car fight. Very close to the rear end of that Turner Motorsports BMW. And Foley under attack once more. Mansilla goes to the racing line, looks to the inside very late. The door was open. He's able to get the car into there.
Contact.
Coming off the turn, and he's fully past. Goes to defend the inside one more time. They're going to go wheel to wheel down into the heel of the boot. Framheim just giving watch. They duck back to the racing line. Mansilla looking to try and seal the deal. Oh, and big contact there with him. Off course goes Foley. He's going to collect it without hitting the wall, but has to now play defense on Visser.
That really messed up Visser's line through turn number 9. She couldn't quite get back on the throttle like she wanted to, and she didn't know what Foley was going to do, what that car was going to do. It was going to swing back in front of her, but she's going to be able to keep it going, and so will Foley right in front of her, who is back now in 4th place. Going to try to get that podium back as Framheim has been promoted up to 3rd.
Looking at Niels Cook, who is continuing to pull away. It's now 3.8 seconds. And I see that the running shoes of Peter Mackay have had some work. It looks like you've had a few visitors down there. Can you give us any info on drivers that have been through pit lane?
Yeah, so far the main one's been Eric Oviatt in the 523 car, who had internet connection issues. Every sim racer's nightmare. If you can imagine, if you're a real world racer and you can't wait to, if you run out of fuel or your engine blows up, well, losing your connection is the equivalent in the sim racing world. Unfortunately, that happened to Eric Oviatt. However, he's managed to get back in and he's out turning laps again.
Watching from onboard Kid. This is chasing Grahovic there in the number 26 for 15th place. And in front of them, we get little glances of Michael W. Johnson. Great run out of the corner, though, out of the inner loop for Kid. Can't quite do anything with it like we saw before. He's going to try and carry the speed off the carousel, and it doesn't produce fruit, so he stays put in P16.
Yeah, they're starting to separate just a little bit here up front and throughout the field. I think they're calming down just a little bit, and only being on lap 4, only being about 8 minutes into this 60-minute race, they are just taking their time trying to log some laps. They're not letting each other get away, though. They're all staying in touch.
Speaking of which, Kid got a good run coming out of the toe. He's got a nose in. He's going to try to send it in deep, and Grahovic doesn't bother to defend. He'll just pull in behind, and Brandon Kidd now claims P15 with a clean move. Back up to our second place battle. Mansilla still leads. Framheim is now in 3rd, as we saw Foley with his problems making contact. Almost looked like that car jumped a little bit, like it was wheel-to-wheel touching. Not something you see a whole lot, Nick, here in GT racing, but I'm kind of worried about his suspension with the way that thing hopped.
Yeah, it hopped, but also I would be very concerned just about the damage. I mean, this is a very aerodynamic dependent racetrack. and it looks like a pretty clean car. The front end of that number 96, it looks all good for now. Maybe later on in the tire run, or maybe in the tire stint, we'll see a little bit more wear out of his car than others, especially with him trying to push so hard to get back to the 106 of Teddy Framheim, trying to recapture third place here.
Yeah, he's absolutely left Visser behind. In fact, Visser's got her own problems. Cantu, who has approached, and the number 13 is trying to get into the top 5. We're going to watch from on board Cantu, looking from the roll bar.
Cantu is one of those drivers who's had a very quiet race. He somehow avoided all that contact that we thought was going to happen on lap number 1. He started up in 7th. He's up to 6th place, and he's got Bitsky Visser right in front of him, trying to get that W Series driver to step back just a little bit and get around her here in the boot.
You talk about a change of seat here for Cantu. He's from the usually racing in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo series, but looking at a top 5, clearly he can handle himself here in this German car. Wow, he gets right underneath the rear wing of Visser. Isn't able to do much with it through turn 9. Maybe he'll set up something for the braking down into turn 1. Once again, much wider than she is coming through some of these corners. Very different lines.
Well, in terms of change of seat, I think a Lamborghini to a BMW, that'd be a lot easier than a W Series Formula car to a BMW. Both of them, though, holding their own as they've got a little bit of a battle forming up right behind him, looks like. As we get a pass and maybe some contact, that is Connor Bloom getting shoved out of the way by Nick Ialoli.
Ooh, and he barely got in line behind Chinichi as well. That 27, remember, he's on a recovery drive. Let's take another look at it. Things got a little bit rough here.
Slipstream for Ialoli.
The stamp and sent it. Meanwhile, Chinichi is going to be under attack as we come back. You can see them on screen. Bloom very, very shallow. And also a little bit offline there for Chinichi, trying to hold on to the car as that Porsche slides around. And it looks like that Bloom's not going to be able to take the position. So we now hop on board looking over his shoulder.
I'm not liking what I'm seeing at the front end of that number 27 Porsche. There is a big dent right in the nose. I'm sure that's hurting Chinichi's performance here, especially on the straightaways.
You can see it on screen. And Nick talked about the aerodynamic importance of the cars. So as they come up and to the heel of the boot once again, wow, already he goes defensive, but just the middle of the track. Oh, late move. Bloom has to get out of the throttle just to avoid contact.
Yeah, all the way down, almost to the inside strip of grass there.
It's a little bit naughty from Chinichi there, but he obviously doesn't want to lose anything more than he's already lost from his start. Qualifying 6th place, he's down in 9th, still not back to where he began this race.
It might honestly help him to have a car directly in front of him to get a little bit of tow.
That's good
to overcome some of those damages. I don't know if he's going to be able to catch Nick Ialoli just based off of pace now. But certainly he's already pulling away from Connor Bloom a little bit, so maybe he's got some, maybe that damage not as effective as we thought it was.
Yeah, Bloom with a little bit of a mistake as we head up to Framheim, who's got a bit of a hunt from Foley. Let's see if Robbie's number 96 has got anything for him. He's going to look to the inside. Framheim, a half-hearted defense. That's going to make things difficult. Down into the inner loop, almost chops him off, but they managed not to make contact. Still looking for the over-under, and there it is once again, as Foley is going to manage to get a nose end, but has to complete the pass now. As they come down to the chute, let's see if he can make it happen. It's not quite there as he's to the outside and he doesn't have a nose ahead. And in the meantime, we've had a problem with Connor Bloom as he has taken a tow to pit lane. And I don't think he hit anything that I can see. He just pulled over, sadly.
Still watching these two side by side. Looks like Foley's going to get that spot. Man, when they came into the bus stop, I thought for sure Framheim was going to get spun. These two are not afraid to slam the door on one another. Foley aggressively gets back to that podium. Like I said, he was trying to hunt down earlier.
So we'll try and give an update on Bloom later, see if we can suss out what happened to him. In the meantime, Foley has Framheim just hanging on to those tire tracks in his 106. Watch from on board, Robbie. He comes around to complete a lap. Whoa! That was late braking there from Teddy.
Certainly was. I think it might have given Foley a little bit of a scare. Well, he had a little bit of a shallow entry. I don't know if he was going defensive through there or if just a little bit of a mistake, maybe a little bit offline. But now you see just how much that hurt Framheim. He's already lost Foley by a couple of car lengths.
So we'll keep him safe at least for now. Foley trying to break that draft. That's a common theme here when we go to Watkins Glen. As that battle settles out, I do see some unfolding between Broadbent and Yaloli. This is for 7th place here, Nick.
Yeah, a couple of BMWs back here. Nick Yaloli, who is continuing to storm up through the front. He's got his elbows out, and he's had them out this entire race. Now it's Jimmy Broadbent that he's trying to get around, though. It's a little bit different of a challenge for him. Broadbent knows this track well, knows the iRacing world well. The physics, of course, of virtual racing. Broadbent goes a little bit wide, but he tries that late apex. I'm wondering what Broadbent's going to do when, if Yaloli's able to catch him. He's certainly been able to close down so far. We see what kind of run they're able to get through the toe. This might be Yaloli's best shot at him. He might be able to reel him in a little bit. But Nick Yaloli, who is pretty much brand new to sim racing, definitely an old dog, new dog type of battle we're seeing here. Broadbent continues to stay out front through that off-camber turn 9, which I'm sure Broadbent has a little bit more experience with, especially how to overcome that fear here in iRacing.
Yeah, it is certainly a bit unique trying to switch over to sim racing. We've seen that with a lot of real-world drivers, having to adjust to the sensation differences, the perception differences as well. We continue to ride on board with Nick, 23. Not quite close enough here, it seems, to try and attempt to pass.
See what kind of braking he has down into the 90. It's pretty conservative. A lot of times people try to late brake that corner a lot, and we ride off the track with him just a little bit. You can do that. You just can't clip the grass here. I don't think there is grass there anymore in the real world, so a lot of these drivers take it all the way up to that guardrail, but that little strip of grass keeps you honest here in the sim.
Certainly does, and even though he's pulling him in, Broadbent's going to be safe unless we get a really wild dive from the 23. He shows his nose just trying to get into the head of the UK&I driver. I don't think that's going to do much, though. Let's head a little bit farther back, because I see Hollander in a nice little fight with Kidd. Kidd, who managed to get up to 15th before, is in 14th and is looking at 13th now. But it looks like Hollander's going to cover him off. Matthew racing for the Porsche Owners Club. Oh, and he makes contact as one of the Porsches in front of him slides around. That
Michael
was...
W. Johnson.
Oh, no.
Michael W. Johnson in the 18 car. He had gone off by himself, it looks like. I think he just got too hot into the bus stop all by himself.
Yeah, that car just started to go around very early. And the car that made contact, I think that was Hollander. Yeah, that was Hollander who plows into him.
Yeah, Hollander's going to hit him right in that right rear tire.
And he, it looked like he was expecting him to continue off to the left side, and then suddenly the car snapped back across. So, oh well, there's some significant damage on the front. He's already got Alan Stad just behind him, as well as Brandon Kidd trying to get that position back that he just lost from Stad. Whoop, and a little more contact. Porsches are getting a lot of paint swapping here today.
They certainly are.
So Kidd watching all this happening, probably just hoping to stay out of the melee that keeps erupting in front of him. He's looking for a good exit, some flashing of the lights from Stad, who's familiar, having raced with Hollander a number of times already. here on iRacing. He's going to try to go to the inside. He's being given the lane. Hollander, oh, for the over-under, though. Clever move from the 477, and he is off like a shot.
And a brave move. We don't see that too many times in the 90. That's a very tricky corner to get an over-under done. I don't think I've seen that too many times. Used that big, wide inside curve to his advantage, but they're still side by side. Stad's got the advantage now on the back straightaway.
I think that damage is really hurting his straight line speed. Hollander was looking like a sitting duck, and Kidd, who has to take a lot of curb on the way in, gets that BMW GT4 up into 13th place finally, which is what he was trying for before.
Not too many of these mid-pack drivers have cars without a couple of scratches on them.
Worth noting that we are only 20 minutes in to this 60-minute race, so we're still waiting on some pit stops to happen for these cars. So there's a long ways to go. Good to see close racing this far into things, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the track position back here in the mid-pack, that is oftentimes decided or helped decided by a lot of the pit stops that we might see with a couple of these drivers if they need them.
And I think we're getting a small correction. Sounds like we should not have pit stops here today for the drivers as they come around turn 9 now. Quite a few in here. This is all for position among all these drivers that you're seeing. And a bit of a split up train being led by Stad. That's Kidd that we mentioned in there. Techi has now passed Hollander as well. And then behind them, Michael W. Johnson, Eric Oviatt, Grahovich, Abrams is in there as well as Jones.
And we had something happen to Yololi. I don't know. I think he just pulled over on the last lap on the back straightaway, and he took it behind the wall. He seems to be done for the day. Maybe some more connection issues, but the driver who was running very well in this race seems to have a day done early.
Watching Framheim still on the back of Foley. They've lost touch with Mansilla, by the way. He is now very firmly in second place. On board with Teddy and the 106, but Foley is keeping him at bay. They've dropped Cantu as well in that battle that we saw with Visser. Cantu in 13 is still in 5th, and they're not nearly a threat to these two. It almost looks like I got 3 cars now involved in that. Not just Cantu and Visser, but Jimmy Broadbent here.
Yeah, Broadbent pulled away from Chinichi and all those drivers once they started battling. He is starting to join the party up here with Cantu and Visser.
Wonder if we're getting close to any lap traffic at this point, and I'm not seeing it. Looks like Sean Foes might be caught by Cook, but otherwise there's not really much in the way of traffic to worry about. We're on board with Broadbent, excuse me, and the 87.
I'm seeing these BMWs not be able to catch each other like we've seen in the Porsches a lot of times. Maybe their slipstream just not as powerful, or Cantu getting very sideways into the 90.
Visser actually, I think, going wide, and that poor exit means that she can't do anything to protect from Broadbent. So the 87 is easily through. That cost both of them quite a bit of time. Cantu might have broken that draft. It depends on what kind of pace he has in that car.
Yeah, he very well might have. There's a big gap now with them on the back straightaway. That's over a second, about 1.2. We know Broadbent, though. He's not going to let that gap get too much bigger.
See if he can try and close in on the 13 now. Maybe he can work together with Visser. Maybe they can try and leapfrog a little bit there. Not missing too much up at the front. Cook is still your leader by nearly 3 seconds over Mansilla. Let's take a look at third once again, though. With Foley now being closely followed by Framheim once again. He was a little bit farther back last we looked here.
Yeah, he's caught him. I don't know if Foley's just taking it a little bit conservatively, but if he's racing like he was earlier in this thing, definitely not the case. But Same goes for Teddy Framheim, who is now on the chasing end of this battle. Gets a little bit better run through turn number 9. Might be able to set him up here through the left-hander and then the right-hander. Back onto the front straightaway. We might see a lunge down to the 90. A little bit of grass, though, taken there on the left side of Framheim.
Down and onto the front stretch. Ooh, boy, and really pushing it. You saw Foley nearly get into that outside wall. He is trying everything to shake this number 106. No pass attempt into the 90. Oh, but he's much cleaner down to the apex. So Framheim not only has a slipstream, but a better run. Fortunately, he might be too close here on the way up through the S's. He wants to have it timed perfectly so that he can try and attack on the backstretch. He might still do that. They climb the hill, up and over the crest now. And a defensive move from Foley is going to hold him back. Framheim doesn't press the issue.
Foley did that really well. He went defensive, but then he swung back out, so he got the really nice optimal line through the bus stop. And I don't think he's going to lose the position into the carousel either. He might lose it into the chute, though, as he leaves the door open just a little bit. Now he shuts it.
Tiny peek from Teddy. Doesn't seem to produce fruit once again. As this has been going on, apparently Peter's been keeping a close eye on the timing sheets between our top two. Let's keep the cameras on this battle just in case. But Peter, have you got an update on what's going on between Cook and Mansilla?
Yes, from what I can see, we have a very motivated little Argentinian, Dorian Mansilla, in the 44 Porsche. Has taken 0.4 of a second on the last 2 laps from Niels Cook. So we are in for a little bit of a thriller. And of course, Dorian Mansilla, this is only his 2nd season of racing cars. He came out of karting and did some races in Porsche Super Cup last year. And this year, he will be doing the British Carrera Cup. And so he will be getting his first experience of Knock Hill. So that might be a little bit of a shock to the system from the warmer climes of Argentina.
I have no doubt about that, as there we see him on screen now. No change of position since we ducked away between P3 and P4. The 44 car is once again closing in 2.6 seconds now up to our leader. Turning once again to the BMW of Robbie Foley. Teddy is going to get another opportunity. Let's see what he does with it as they come up through the S's. There's another spot with a lot of elevation change. It's a little bit far behind though here, 142 miles an hour once they get through those back and forth weaving turns. 148 by the time they hit the end of the backstretch and brake for the inner loop. Ooh, another little look. Oh, and a dive even down into the outer loop. The 106. He's getting feisty.
Yeah, he's this battling has created a situation for Foley where he's really kind of lost sight of anyone in front of him. That's a big gap, about 5-6 seconds ahead to Mansilla, who's on a tear, we know, to get up to Niels Cook for the lead. So this is all the focus for these two drivers can be directed towards one another, and we are really seeing that right now out of Teddy Framheim especially. He is very offensive, trying to get around the very defensive Robbie Foley, and we are seeing some great action between the two because of it.
This is the last race of the season, mind you, so if you want a good finish, this now or never, essentially. So I wonder if that's why we're seeing such fierce racing from some of these drivers. And Teddy, he continues to stay glued to that gearbox, which we watch from on Robbie Foley's BMW. See if he can send himself a little bit faster out of the final turn. Maybe get a chance down into the 90. And it's looking very good if he can carry that speed, and he does so well. Dirty defense from Foley. He's holding off to the racing line. No attack from Teddy either. They're going to stay in line. Once again, very strong in that corner. The Porsche mid-turn, Nick, is just gobbling up the gap.
Yeah, it really is. He is able to pull in, but he's not able to pull up alongside of him yet. We haven't seen that. Now, there again, Robbie Foley has been very defensive. There he goes again, down to the inside here on the back straightaway. We see the big run out of the 106. The door's open. He's going to take a peek into the bus stop, but that door is shut once again. Framheim's got to get on the brakes a little early because Robbie Foley wants to keep that position, and he's going to do so.
Goodness, this is getting pretty tight between these two. He has to back off now that he's lost a little time. He'll probably regroup and go at it once again. Framheim, one of those drivers, also coming with a lot of experience here in the virtual world, racing in the Porsche Owners Club Sim Racing League,
where we saw him have a very good result earlier. He won at Sebring just a few days ago, about a week ago.
Point. It's no wonder then that he is fighting for podiums here. Compare that to the pole winner for round one, and also a real-world racing driver running in another type of BMW typically, but also counting 2 IMSA career victories up in their Premier Series. So at the top of the top there for Robbie Foley. So we once again take a glance at Cook. Heads down the front stretch, and 30 minutes and 20 seconds left. That's pretty much halfway here for Niels Cook. Just has to do this one more time, but I'm noticing that he is now got a mirror full of Mansilla. It's down to 2 seconds. Can we get a lap comparison between these two with the way things have been going?
Yeah, I've been watching that as well, and Peter's been keeping a very close eye on these two who might be battling each other here soon. Mansilla has been coming forward. I mean, it's a couple of tenths here, a couple of tenths there. He continues to close in. Like you said, he's got that now under a 2-second gap. Peter, do you think the tire wear between the two is what's affecting him? Is the BMW shredding those tires just a little bit quicker? Is Mansilla, was he a little bit conservative here at the start?
Perhaps it might have been that Mansilla was perhaps hampered by his competition a little bit more, and perhaps Cook was able to just get away and escape a little bit and push on in those early laps. Remember, Cook is the only one to put a lap under 1 minute 57 in the entire race, and he put that in early, so that would certainly back that theory up. But I think now that Mansilla is free and he can see he's kind of got the rabbit in front of him, I think he's just driving really, really well. And Cook is perhaps now starting to mirror drive slightly by looking in his mirror thinking, oh dear, that Porsche Cayman is getting larger and larger in my mirror.
Unfortunately, it looks like we've had an issue from Michael W. Johnson. He spun in the heel of the boot, and now he's down pit lane. He didn't hit anything, so I'm not sure why he's in here. Now, Johnson, if I'm remembering correctly, Nick, he was the one that got hit, though. I wonder if the handling is gone from that car.
Yeah, I'm wondering, we were talking about maybe some suspension issues. That might be what prompted the spin. He might have been struggling this entire race with that, so maybe he is getting some repairs down there. I see the leaders that just whizzed by him there on the front straightaway, so yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised if that's the situation he's dealing with.
We're watching the battle between Visser and Broadbent yet again. This is for 6th place currently. And also, I want to give a quick mention to the weather, which has continued to drop. It's 93 degrees Fahrenheit on the track surface now, so cooler and cooler. That's actually probably what the drivers are wanting, is to keep the grip up with the tires getting hotter and more worn in. As they climb up the hill, Broadbent going to be well safe from Visser, unless she gets a monster run.
Yeah, they've been about this difference for most of the last few laps. Visser has not really been able to close back in ever since she got forced into a mistake, kind of. And Broadbent was able to get by. Now they've got a little bit of lap traffic. Broadbent's going to flash the lights at foes. They get by him, and Visser was able to close in maybe a couple hundredths, but not too much there for her to get back at Jimmy Broadbent.
So now we are seeing the lap traffic come into play a little bit. And in fact, looks like Foley and Framheim had to get by Michael Johnson as well, as he's returned to the track. W. Johnson, I shouldn't mention. Oh, wow. Mansilla is now 1.1 seconds behind Cook. So if he gets a decent run here, Nick, I mean, he actually might be feeling the effects of the slipstream from here.
It would be coming soon, that's for sure. He's going to need to close in a little bit more, I think. If you're going to want to be underneath a second, especially with the straightaways here. But if he gets a good run out of the last turn, and it looks like he is, good run through the 90, he'll definitely be catching him in the S's, I think. It's down to a second.
Continuing to chip away. Can Cook deal with this pressure? Down and through the 90. Let's watch that timing and scoring. Let's see if it updates. 0.9, another 10th knocked off. Now they head up the hill. This is Porsche versus BMW. This is almost ideal. Two different cars able to fight against one another, really see their strengths against one another. Mansilla doesn't gain a whole lot. It stays at about 9/10 now that they hit the braking here for the inner loop. Still, this bodes well for the 44.
I wonder if it's the boot that Mansilla is catching him in mostly. That's where a lot of the more technical turns come in this track, and if he's able to get late on the brakes and still get a good drive off, this is certainly where we're going to see him reel in that 98 car. Already you can see it through the chute. Look at that, down to 8/10.
Wonder if one of the cars is a little bit nicer to its tires here. So Mansilla down into the toe, 7/10 of a second now. Boy, he is really reeling him in as they come up the hill, starting to look to the inside a little bit. Cook, is he trying to break that draft? Is he using little tricks and things now just to give him the slight edge he's going to need to finish up the second half of this race in the lead?
Well, if he can keep at this and continue to chip away, I think this next time up through the S, he'll certainly be feeling that slipstream a little bit more. And I think when he gets to the back of the 98, he's not going to be messing around. He's going to want to get by.
Out to the final corner one more time. Can't stress enough how tense this is for drivers. Even when, Nick, they don't have that side-by-side racing, seeing those numbers creep down just has to play on you mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like we had a little bit of contact between Broadbent and Visser. I think Broadbent might have touched the wall, it sounds like. Or at least touched her just a little bit. This was back in the chute. She's reeled in that gap, but Broadbent continues to hold steady in 6th place.
Yeah, it started in the inner loop, actually, and Visser had to cut through the course, so we'll need to back up a little bit more here. This is just as it was finishing up, because this started as they were coming into the inner loop. There it is right there, cutting through. Going to get a slowdown penalty here, and then here comes the contact.
Yep, just a little bit of door-to-door banging right there. Oh, and I can report on track live, Broadbent has just been turned by her into the bus stop. If we come back live, Jimmers has had the puncherino.
Yeah, seemed like she thought she had a nose in, and Jimmy seemed to think otherwise. Let's take a look at this replay now. Oh, just turned him.
Yeah,
and something's happened to Cook. Cook is well behind.
Oh,
there was this very similar situation. Mansilla had to go at him, touched the right rear of the BMW, and the 98 found himself turned around in the toe of the boot. Mansilla has little thought for that one as he kept on going and has not handed the lead back.
Well, I mentioned Mansilla wasn't going to be messing around. I didn't think it would have to come that aggressively, though, and I don't think that was his intention, but he wanted to make sure that Cook knew he was there. And now Cook sits back behind him in 2nd.
A little bit of a touch to the wheel. Once again, you got to worry about that suspension when that stuff happens. 3.8 seconds behind Dorian. Foley, who wasn't nearly close enough to take advantage, is still about 5 seconds behind. So that battle between Foley and Framheim is not going to be joined by another car, at least for the time being. Ooh, this is a great run, though, here from Framheim.
It really is.
Outside once. Takes another look. Robbie's going to stay to the inside. Now he comes back to the racing line. Didn't quite time it right, so Teddy's going to have to give it another go later. Car you see behind them, that is W. Johnson. He's not in position. This is not a fight for position with him. He's a lap down.
Joe, one thing I noticed between these two, and I've noticed this for a couple of laps now as Framline gets real close to the back of Foley, is that they have very different lines through a couple of turns. Framheim especially is trying to do whatever Foley doesn't. He's trying to get underneath him here. There you see an example of it. He's doing whatever it takes to get by him, and he's been at this all race long. Now with about 21 minutes left on the clock, he's going to really have his work cut out for him.
Starting to see a little bit more desperate moves from Teddy. Just trying here and there to see if he can make something stick. And already we've seen cars get turned multiple times in this race by moves like that, so I'm not confident. Hopefully he has some sort of spotter letting him know that that's the way that those sort of moves have gone so far.
Yeah, they have not been afraid to slam the door on each other's toes a couple of times in this race.
Once again, gets right up underneath in mid-corner, then coming off the turn, Teddy just can't seem to do anything with it, and exactly when he wants it is down into the braking at turn 1, and he doesn't have it. Well, right this time though. Oh, this looks promising.
Oh, a little bit of a bobble. I don't know if that's going to hurt him enough to get him out of contention here. No, I don't think so. He's going to come right back at it.
We're going to see Foley cover off the inside, and he does initially, then comes back. Doesn't feel threatened enough here by the 106. We are down to 18 cars left on the lead lap. Matthew Hollander is the last one currently.
This has got to be mentally and physically exhausting for both of these drivers to keep going at it like this.
A bit of a slide, maybe a late apex here for Teddy as we ride on board. Talked about the difference in lines between them, and once again, just taking that dirt track approach, go where the other is not.
We're coming up on Mikel Miller, the lapped car. They might catch him here in the heel. They might even catch him up on turn number 9. That's probably the worst place to catch a lapped car here at the Glen. No, I think it's going to be a little bit later than that. But already, the flashing lights out of Foley will alert him in the 14 car.
He's in no mood to sit around and wait behind another BMW. As they come down into the penultimate turn, flashing at him once again. This might actually hold him up a little bit on the final corner. He's going to stick to his racing line because it's hard to hand it over here in this short chute. What's he going to do here? Holds his racing line, lets him go to the inside. Teddy's going to be able to get through as well. A little bit of nervous moments for Robbie.
And that's going to create a little bit of a shallow entry for Framheim. That's really worked out in Foley's favor, I think.
Yeah, I think he got a much better exit. You can see them coming up the hill, how that worked out. That battle, well, it's becoming a battle, rather. Mikel Miller being caught by Johnson, who's continuing to roll around behind our battle for P3.
Looks like Miller is pretty badly off the pace. I don't know if this is going to be much of a fight for Johnson. I think he's going to be able to easily get by. But just as I say that, Miller holds his own through the bus stop.
Yeah, lap times from Miller looking at 203, 204, 203 versus sub 2 minutes for Johnson. I think it will be easy pickings. Depends on when he wants to try and make it happen. As long as he doesn't make an error. He's just stalking him for now. And takes a little bit of a look, but decides better of it.
He knows he's going to have this position. He doesn't want to be too aggressive when he doesn't have to. He might be able to snatch it up here. No, maybe not.
Texas driver continues to hound the Californian. Just another little bit of a look. I mean, for what it's worth, there's not another car until about 23 seconds up the road, so Johnson doesn't
Yeah.
have to hustle here.
Might be able to sneak in underneath. Man, Miller is just teasing him, opening the door just a little bit, but not letting him through. Now the lights start flashing.
I'm sorry, this one's for position, Michael, so you got to work for that one. Let's see if he can get the good exit. It looks much cleaner coming through the final turn. Miller doesn't defend. Johnson's going to have the inside. Yep. And that's going to be the slam dunk that we expected. So the 18 now up to 19th position. Dorian Mansilla qualified on the front row. Didn't seem to quite have it at the start of the race, but the tires came in, and they came in well. But worth noting, and Peter, it seems like you've been kind of following this as well, Cook has not really dropped off of him. They look very even on pace.
Yes, you're spot on there. Dan Mansilla last time set a 1 minute 58.7 and Niels Cook a 1 minute 58.8. So not only can they not be separated, that neither of them appear to have any kind of damage that's holding them back. And interestingly, when we saw Mansilla put that very aggressive move on Cook and make contact, we saw quite an amount of movement in the bodywork of Cook's BMW, but maybe just a glitch there perhaps. But it's great to see actually that both cars are up and running at normal pace again. But I mentioned for Robbie Foley and Teddy Framheim, both of those drivers have the same outright pace as Mansilla, but the difference is that Foley and Framheim have basically slowed each other up throughout the race.
Yeah, and I guess that just goes to show you got to play the long game. And they did not at the start, and it's bit them. They're still fighting with each other. It's just a little bit more tame compared to what we saw early on. Teddy just keeps trying to do anything he can on the 96. As they come now through the final turn. The difference in handling between the cars doesn't seem to be helping that 106 machine have any sort of real opportunities to try to get by. Look at him once again fall away. Almost makes me wonder if there's more wing on that Porsche than there is on the BMW.
There could be, because that is where we're seeing Framheim close in through the technical portions of the boot. We're seeing Foley pull away on the straightaway right here through the S's. This should be Framheim's, this should be where he's able to reel him in the most, and it seems like it's the opposite. He's able to catch him through a little bit of slipstream, but not able to pull up alongside of him. Makes for a very little interesting standoff between these two drivers. And another thing that Peter's pointed out to us is Robbie Foley has some real-world experience here at this track. I was able to watch him finish 6th place here last summer at the Tioga Downs 240 in the Pilot Challenge. So I'm sure that's playing into his advantage just a little bit.
Certainly doesn't hurt. So we now ride on board with the helmet cam of Teddy. They've got 13 more minutes to try to settle this fight out. And with how much they've been glued to one another, I can't imagine that this is going away soon unless it ends in tears. As they climb back up the hill, Teddy Framheim going to be very sick of that bright yellow Turner Motorsports BMW, since it seems now he's spent the majority of it riding on its coattails.
Yeah, I don't know what his game plan is at this point. I don't know what I would do if I were you, Joe, or if I were Teddy Framheim trying to close in here. I mean, you could always get the bumper out, but you don't want to do that. And he's done a great job. Both of these drivers have done a great job keeping this clean but aggressive this entire race long. And I just don't know what else he can do. He's tried pretty much every line, tried to late apex every corner there is to do that, and still just can't get up alongside Robbie.
As that battle has been going on, we've had something brewing for 12th. John Tecci with Alan Stad and Brandon Kidd are all together. The 38 of Tecci leads the group. Oh, that's a little bit of a mistake from Stad. Some wheel spin maybe. It's going to cost him. The 619 falls to 14th as Brandon Kidd is now up to P13. So can he now set his sights on John in the number 38?
Brandon Kidd, believe it or not, one of those drivers that was caught out early in this race with that lap 1, turn 1 incident that involved Zug getting turned in front of them all. That damage has set Kidd back, and he's been still up to this point in the race with just about under 12 minutes left in this race, still been fighting back up through the field.
Fighting is the right word. You saw the front end of the car. There it is on your screen, all buckled up. So it cannot be fast in a straight line, and yet he is still going at it and still making overtakes. In fact, a little bit off the apex there for Techi. Could allow Kidd yet another go at things. As the New Yorker racing in his home state. Oh no, he is not very fast in a straight line at all. Stad is already closing up behind him.
Don't even think he needed the slipstream to get by him. Just
wow,
went past him like he was parked.
Brandon's got to be a little bit frustrated. Same could be said for Teddy here in fourth place rather, fighting for third place. Foley fending him off. Now they're down to 10 minutes left to go.
It's only gonna be about 5 laps for them, I believe.
Looks like we're being shown 6.
Yep,
but
about 6 to go. Yep.
This all has meant that they've lost 7 seconds to Cook, and they are 10 seconds behind the leader, which is still Dorian Mansilla. We haven't been covering him a whole lot ever since he's taken that lead away, but he's not given us much reason to go to him. The gap has been holding station between himself and the 98.
He has been on cruise control pretty much since he was able to get by Cook.
Now there you see Mansilla on screen. And I believe, looking to see who has the fastest lap, and I think Foley holds it right now, if I'm seeing correctly.
It just shows you just how much he's charging to keep Framheim behind him. The fight for the last step on the podium it's been hot all race long, but it is really starting to heat up now. I'm seeing Framheim all over the back end of that 96 car.
Excuse me, it is Niels Cook. I just realized that his 56.7 was not a 57 time. So just miles ahead of everybody else in terms of 1 lap pace. Out and through turn 9. A little bit off the apex once again for Robbie Foley. Speaking of pace, seems like the temperature's not able to overcome the tire wear because it's still once again down 91 degrees Fahrenheit. Compare that to the warm-up temperatures, which were 100 plus, 106 I think was the hottest we saw. Not really much change for wind. That's been very consistently at about 2 miles an hour for much of this race. We're actually getting relatively late in the day at this point. It's 5:30, almost 5:30 p.m. virtual standard time now here in New York.
Yeah, that temperature has fallen off, continued to fall off as the sun begins to set here, and it's like you mentioned, the wind has not played any factor today. Very rare up on the top of the hill here at Watkins Glen. Usually very breezy up here.
These two have really gotten a lot of screen time, mainly just for the fact that they've been so close to one another. It almost makes me wonder, Nick, is Teddy maybe holding back a little bit? Nope, maybe not. I was just going to say that answers that.
Yeah, I think he's doing everything he can, but I just don't know if he's going to have the pace to get around him. We haven't even been able to see him get up alongside him pretty much yet. I don't know if he's holding back at all, but certainly not with his lunges down into the corner. At the same time, Foley's not holding back at all with his defense.
And that dent in the nose might be something to do with it as well. I wonder if his straight line speed just isn't there because he can't quite get all the way up to what he normally can. They come back onto the main course one more time. He's been trying his hardest. Foley, having raced 10 tops and quite a few different disciplines. Of course, the Global MX5 Cup in the real world. Finished 4th there back in 2016. Has been working his way up the ranks. Raced also in the Prototype Challenge as well in 2017. Took 2 podiums there, did Foley.
You know what, Joe? I'm starting to see Framheim make a couple of mistakes. I think he might start to be overdriving the car just a little bit. We're hearing from Peter as well. Peter, you've been keeping an eye on these lap times and the pace between the two. It sounds like Framheim might be falling off a bit.
Yes, there is very, very little to separate these two men, and up at the front as well, Mansilla and Cook, a really fascinating difference between the pace there. Cook had been dropping he'd been picking up, about 2 or 3 tenths a lap for the last three laps or so, but Mansilla has steadied the ship now and been quicker in the last 2, so that gap still hovers around 3.5 seconds, but I would say that Foley, he's just got that edge, and perhaps that real world experience working well.
Meanwhile, I'm glancing at... Oh, is that a little touch there from Shinichi on Visser?
It was. A little bump drafting.
Shinichi obviously a little impatient here at the end. Only a couple laps to go. He's been trying to close in on Visser and get another position. Remember, Shinichi was one of those that also fell down the order slightly after being higher up. Right on board with Visser. The Dutch driver has got her hands full, and she's got to keep this defense for what looks like 4 more minutes.
She's been doing a great job of keeping a pretty consistent pace all race long, and a great job when she was racing with Jimmy Broadbent. We know she's got the pace, finished 2nd place in the W Series last season in the real world, and now we see a very aggressive Andrew Shinichi trying to come forward and take that spot away. But we're seeing him maybe overdrive a couple of these turns.
Something appears to be seriously wrong with Framheim, because he is now 4 seconds back. I wonder if he short fueled it, or maybe the damage on the front caused him a little bit more fuel. Let's listen and see if we can hear if he lifts and coasts. But I wonder if the damage maybe just was increasing the fuel rate higher than he expected.
Doesn't sound like he's lifting there.
This is bizarre. That was a huge drop. Unless he had a cut course penalty or something there.
Oh, he could have. He was pretty hard over a couple of the curbs trying to catch Foley. I wonder. I don't know of too many places here at the Glen that you can get that on iRacing, but then again, I'm not usually racing as aggressively as Framheim has been.
Also, a similar situation happened with Shinichi, who has now fallen back.
Well, we know he's got some damage. Maybe he's fallen out of Vitsky Visser's slipstream a little bit. Hard to tell.
Yeah, this is highly unusual that we're suddenly seeing this at the very end of the race. Usually drivers know at least a little bit more early on if they're close on fuel. That leaves us with both those battles breaking up. Only P12 for now. Techi being chased by Stad. Kidd has started to fall off of the two of them. Speaking of damage, I'm guessing that the nose damage he's experiencing is making life difficult to try and stay in touch with 2 Porsches. You can see little bits of that hood flapping away with the air resistance hitting it. Oh, and a move in front of them as Stad takes a look on Techi. John says, not at this point. I don't think I'm willing to give this one up at the very end of the race. Stad still going for a good launch off of the toe of the boot, and he dives down to the inside. Can he get the overlap, and can he outbrake John? The 38 tries to take it as deep as possible. They're going to be side by side through the heel of the boot, and the track is going to switch back. John's going to have the advantage as they stay wheel to wheel. Stad not giving it up, but off camber, and a very difficult blind corner means that finally he is behind. Goes for the over-under. This is going to be sketchy if they go too wide through here. No, he's chopped off.
Great job by Techi. That's going to allow Brandon Kidd, though, to close in. Now Kidd's going to make a little bit of a jump. Instead, he's going to hit the grass. That shoots him outside the track as he spins it in turn number 12.
Just got a little ambitious. I'm going to watch the replay. He saw the opening.
Yeah, did everything right. Just hit that grass at such an awkward angle and speed.
And Stad nearly got taken out by that incident. He's very lucky. He did drop a little bit because of that fighting. Techi seems to have pulled away from him.
Techi's had a great race. Came up from 15th up to 12th. He's had a quiet race, but a consistent one. Car looks relatively undamaged, and he is really doing a great job representing the team that he actually owns over in BGB Motorsports, driver owner over there in the Pilot Series.
Meanwhile, sounds like Peter's been watching the onboards for the 106 car. Peter, what have you been able to suss out for that?
Yeah, from what I can decipher from the onboards, there's two things. There's one thing for sure is that Teddy is not saving fuel in that Porsche Caymans because he's reaching the very limit of every gear change. So normally when you see drivers fuel saving, they would change up a little bit below the maximum rev limit. But however, the other thing I noticed is he's fighting quite a lot of oversteer, even going through the S's, which is relatively straightforward in a GT4 car. He's pretty busy on steering inputs, so I suspect he's maybe burnt his tyres out trying to keep up with Robbie Foley.
A good catch on that one. Big thanks to our pit reporter, Peter Mackay. And we should point out that we are on the white flag lap. Dorian Mansilla is wrapping things up. He's kept the distance at about 3 seconds to Niels Cook. He has not been phased ever since he took the lead away. I'm wondering how Cook is going to feel about this one after all is said and done, knowing that he could have at least stayed on equal pace for the latter half of the race. So as we come down through the heel of the boot, when that's come down by about half a second just now, Cook is gaining. Is Mansilla starting to feel the tires, or is this also potentially fuel? The Porsche 718 Cayman has just a couple corners to go, and it's gone back up to 2.8, so maybe crisis averted here. All he has to do is essentially coast it to the line from here as Dorian Mansilla took it from second place outside of the front row to the win here in the final round of the IMSA iRacing Challenge. And Niels Cook is going to come home in second. Foley with a well-earned third. Talk about standing up under pressure, the 96. He deserved this one.
And Teddy Framheim, what a drive he had. A little bit of front end damage as he comes across the line. He's going to finish fourth. That's a fourth place well earned for him as well. He had quite a lot of pace there tonight, as Andy Cantu, with a little bit of a quieter run, will round out the top 5.
Christer got her elbows out, and that's going to reward her with a 6. Shinichi is going to be able to finish in 7th. And how about this? We didn't get to cover him, but Zug came all the way back to 8th place. I'm sure he wanted more than that, though. Broadbent, how about this? The YouTube star is going to get a top 10 today with 9th. That should be encouraging up against all kinds of real-world professionals. Last of the drivers coming to the line. 17 wound up on the lead lap. Michael R. Johnson with a top 10 himself. Kind of an anonymous race for the 36 car. Bergstein with an 11th. And Stad got by Techi when we weren't looking.
He did. He's going to come across the line like that. And that'll all happen in front of Jacob Abrams, who comes across, he got around Brandon Kidd.
Last of them coming to the line at Grahovich in 16th, well ahead of Jones in 17th. So that's going to be the last of our drivers here today for the final round of the IMSA iRacing Challenge. Stick around because we've got the post-race show coming. We'll have driver interviews as well as the unofficial results. And don't go away because on screen you'll see all the upcoming races here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Welcome back to Watkins Glen International. We just watched the final round of the IMSA iRacing Challenge, mimicking the real-world IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge, which has given us lots of thrills in the real world and the virtual world. And Dorian Mansilla was the one who took the pride of taking the victory here at Watkins Glen, the historic venue. Niels Cook had a little bit of a rough time on this one. He got shoved out of the way, but he still managed to keep up for second place. And then Robbie Foley with some great defensive driving to take a podium today in third. Teddy Framheim, we think he cooked his tires. He wound up in fourth in the end, and Andy Cantu was P5. Then you've got Betsky Visser in sixth position with Andrew Chinichi in P7. Marius Zug with the 8th place finish. And Jimmy Broadbent comes through with 9th. And you've got Michael R. Johnson rounding out the top 10.
Yeah, good run for Johnson. They're up from 18th to 10th, and good quiet run for Lance Bergstein as well, from 13th up to 11th. Alan Stad there, saw him in a couple battles towards the end, up to 12th place. John Tecci in the 38 car, he moves up to 13th with Jacob Abrams and Brandon Kidd, the kid out of Syracuse, coming home in 15th. Toby Grahovich and Devin Jones are going to be your last two drivers on the lead lap. One lap down is each going to be Matthew Hollander, Michael W. Johnson, and Mikael Miller in the 14 machine.
There on down, drivers that didn't have the greatest of days. Nielsen Lawrence, unfortunately, was quick in the first round, but not this one. He was 21st. Eric Oviat had some internet connection problems. 2 laps down, 22nd. Sean Foes, 23rd. And then your DNFs, Yaloli and Bloom. So we've got our second place finisher ready to talk to us, Niels Cook. He joins us here in the booth. And Niels, let's go to, I guess, one of the more controversial moments of the race. You were caught by Dorian, and then you got roughed up a little bit. What's your take on the incident?
Hi, guys. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that there was nowhere near side by side or being even an opportunity to overtake. But yeah, I think that's what you get when there's no penalty system involved. So yeah, the big shame that we didn't fight for it, and would have been a nice show, I think. But like this, it was the safe way for him, I would say.
Yeah, well, it seemed like he was closing in on you at the least. So talk a little bit about maybe your setup. Did you find that it was better at the start of the race because you pulled away from him, and then suddenly the gap started coming down?
Yeah, I mean, that was very clear before the race already, that if there's one Porsche driver who has at least a little bit decent pace, the BMW would be nowhere near. I think the drop-off is it's the same for every BMW. So the iRacing tire model on that car or on both cars is quite buggy at the moment, and the BMW suffers much more from that. And I think on the one lap or qualifying pace, the cars are pretty even. But then the BMW is just getting worse and worse, and was pretty clear before the race that there would be no chance to Porsche behind.
Well, still, you managed to podium here in the last race of this short little season. I guess with you getting ready to compete more with BS competition, are you looking forward to more coming in the World Championship races?
Yeah, definitely. I think next big event is the 24 Hours of Le Mans, so looking forward to that one. And then, yeah, hopefully some more GT4 racing with fixed tires, probably.
All right. Well, we hope for the best for you. And again, congratulations on a podium today.
You guys, thanks for broadcasting.
As Niels Cook, who wound up second today. And then up next, Nick has caught up with fourth place finisher Teddy Framheim.
Yeah, we've seen Teddy here on GSRC before, but that's over in the Porsche Owners Club series. Teddy, tonight you put on a great run trying to chase down Robbie Foley for that third place position. At first, we thought it was tires. I'm starting to look back. Did you make some contact that we didn't quite catch on air?
Yeah, exactly. We had some contact going into the last corner, which was totally my fault. But as a result of that, it felt like some kind of aero imbalance. My car was terribly unstable, no traction for the rest of the race. So the best I could do was just try and stay in fourth.
Yeah, I started wondering. I saw that hood kind of bobbling as it came across the line. But you had a great job, a great run staying with him all day long. And you mentioned the aerodynamics. We're wondering, I mean, you and Robbie were nose to tail the whole race long, but you couldn't quite get up alongside of him. Was there a difference in wing, maybe a little bit difference in the setup? How did that affect you throughout the race?
It could be. I mean, also, it was just a great defensive drive. I mean, there weren't many opportunities. I started to identify a few later in the race, but also, to be frank, he's an IMSA driver, and I'm just a guy in my office. I didn't want to risk punting him for sure.
Well, certainly an impressive drive nonetheless. You got to give, hats off to you for finishing fourth and to, like I said, stick with him so intensely throughout the race. Before we let you go here today, Teddy, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, certainly my wife, a couple of family members and friends watching. I think this race was a bit more interesting than the last time, so hopefully it was a bit more fun to watch. Thanks, guys.
Certainly was. Watkins Glen never disappoints in terms of the competition, and certainly, Teddy, you did a great job today. Thanks for stopping by. That's Teddy Framheim coming home in fourth place. Michael Johnson has caught up with our pit reporter, it sounds like, Peter Mackay.
Michael, welcome to the booth. How did you find that race out there at Watkins Glen today?
Well, it was a little more exciting than I planned on it being. I got a little tap from behind from one of the back markers. Somebody, I think, had computer issues and fell out and came back in and did a little damage that I didn't quite realize. And suddenly my rear end just was all over the place. And I had to go in and get a quick repair for it because I could not keep the car pointed in the right direction around a sweeper.
It's always not. That's not the place for that to happen here at Watkins Glen. Is it a track that you normally enjoy in these particular GT4 cars?
I love Watkins Glen. One of my clients actually has a GT4, and we've been here several times working with him using his car, obviously, around this track. And it is a beautiful track, especially with these Michelin tires. It just they get a little bit of heat in them, get a little sticky, and suddenly it's just heaven. And you're like, oh, I'm just floating around here. Everything is hooked up and beautiful. So yeah, I love this track. I love these tires. I love this car as long as I don't, get hit from behind and lose whatever it is I lost.
And of course, that's a generous client letting you get into the driver's seat.
Not as much as I'd like, but honestly, it's his car. It's his training time, and he's working his way up. What we'd like to do is get him into a GT4 car in the IMSA series. It's just we got a little bit more work to do, and I expect probably next season you might see Ben Bettenhausen and myself driving in a real IMSA race.
Well, we'll be really excited to see that, perhaps at the Rolex 24 in the Michelin Pilot Challenge next year. Before we let you go, Michael, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to?
Well, of course, I'd love to say thank you to Simply, who was my sponsor for this race. Unfortunately, we were not able to get the logos on the car in time, but of course, thank you to Simply for making sure that I got a little time and a little support to be here. I'd like to say thank you to Ben Bettenhausen, one of my major clients. Also to Sanjay, another one of my clients. He runs a cancer treatment center, and just a fantastic guy. He actually drives a GT3 car, and we're playing with some ideas with him. But of course, all the sponsors, all the series sponsors, Michelin Tire, and IMSA. Of course, you have to thank IMSA because they've really gone out of their way to give the fans something to watch here with these iRacing races.
I completely agree with you. IMSA have done a fantastic job. Michael, thanks for coming in to chat to us, and hopefully see you out on track before too long.
Thank you.
That was Michael Johnson there, as he was saying, one of the coaches for Ben Bettenhausen. And we've got the other Johnson. That was Michael W. we were talking to. We've got Michael R. here with us, too. He finished up in 10th place. And Michael, a top 10, not too shabby to round out the season. Are you pretty happy with that?
I am absolutely thrilled with that. What a difference a couple weeks can make for a new sim racer. I'm pretty new to this whole sim racing world. So much to learn, but completely different race this week, and delighted with the result today.
Now, one track that we didn't get to race on here in the sim version of the Challenge series that I know you're from Texas. Have you had a chance to go run at COTA yet?
Absolutely, and believe it or not, I've actually raced bicycles there as well. Just to stay fit, I like to ride bicycles, so I've done bicycle races there as well. But I wish we could have gone to COTA. That's one of my favorite tracks in the world, but maybe next time around.
You and our director will have to swap notes because he loves that place too. Well, now that we are wrapping up, what's your next step? Have you been bitten by the sim racing bug? You think you're going to stick around on iRacing?
Without a doubt, and it's just it's a huge learning curve, and I'm sure anyone I know there's a lot of other competitors that I was racing with today that are new to sim racing. Some of the guys are real veterans, but it's just a huge learning curve when you first get into it, and it's kind of getting over that initial hump. And I feel like I'm just starting to figure a few things out now. That's making it so much more fun. So absolutely love it. Thanks to the whole IMSA crew. They've put on an outstanding series, giving us a chance to run in the Challenge series, as well as all of you guys at the Global SimRacing Channel. Thanks for keeping it entertaining for us. But just if I can throw out a couple sponsors, Moflac that painted the car for me this week, as well as Linear Edge, who does all the really cool track maps for us. So thanks to those guys for helping me out in this deal.
I'm gonna go check them out because I've been wanting to get some track maps up on the wall. That was Michael R. Johnson that we were talking to, getting a top 10 here at Watkins Glen. And that's going to close out things for us at the Global Sim Racing Channel for our coverage of the IMSA iRacing Challenge. And we also not only want to thank IMSA for coming to us for coverage, but also to their major sponsors, Michelin, of course, for helping making all this happen, as well as WeatherTech. And don't forget, the WeatherTech version of this series is coming up later today with the GTE cars. So there's more IMSA racing coming your way here from iRacing. Also, we want to thank the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Nick, Peter, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Also, check out our social media on Twitter. That'll be GSR Channel for Twitter, and Facebook is Global Sim Racing Channel. Instagram is GSRC_brand. If you'd like to support us, we've got a merchandise store. It's gsrc.storeenvy.com. The link is in the description below. And make sure and subscribe to GSRC just by clicking that big red subscribe button while you're down there. Though we don't have any more IMSA races for the time being, we do have a race coming up tonight. That'll be the Lionheart the Retro Series rather. And that'll be coming on at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure and check those out. We also have upcoming races for other series. Check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard. See you on the track.